The question today, ladies and gentlemen, should the Saints have made a move at the NFL deadline? Should there have been a trade? Should we have tried to acquire somebody? There are quite a few teams who looked like they were sellers. Nothing got done, certainly not from the Saints side of things. So we'll talk about that. Listen to what Mickey has to say here. You may say, James, a very nice overcoat you're wearing there. Thank you. It is 40 degrees in New Orleans right now. We had a 35-degree swing in 24 hours. I am not made for this. Let's get into the video.
Deadline passed earlier. No moves by the Saints. Obviously, I'm trying to determine what the question would be, but I guess...
Glad you asked, because I usually have the answer. So the way I look at the deadline, the way I look at adding and subtracting players is you have to judge it on your window. Do you believe you are in a win-now situation? Do you believe the dominoes are set up for you to tip over to where you can have a successful season, whether that's winning the playoff or going to the playoffs, whether that's winning a Super Bowl, whether that's winning a conference championship? You have to figure out what your goals are and if what's happened at this point in the season lines up with those goals. If they line up with them, you look at making an addition. You look at kind of saying, well, we're doing good right now, or we're positioned right now to win, so let's go ahead and leverage some assets to try and make sure we win. Or vice versa, if you're losing or you have injuries or whatever, then you may say, you know what, we're trying to get out of a situation anyways, whether it's contract or an aging player or someone who doesn't want to be there. Let's go ahead and get assets for that, build for the future. I think the Saints were in an add situation. I think the Saints, if you look at their season, what are the goals? The goals are make the playoffs, win the division, win more than 10 games, make a run in the NFC playoffs, make a run at the NFC Championship game. And I think they could have made some moves. I think if you look at the players available, this is how I would have went down my tier list. I would have said, all right, what do the Raiders want for Davante Adams? And you may say, whoa, hold on a second. That's big. And it is big, but why not go big? And another thing too, I don't want to hear anybody say, oh, well, a salary this or a contract this. Guys, it's the NFL. It's funny money. No NFL team, write this down. No NFL team in the history of the NFL has not been allowed to play on Sunday because of the salary, because of their contract situation. No one knows what it is. It's fugazi. It's fake. It's made up. It's monopoly money. So trust me, if you make a move, you can figure out the contract. But the reason I say Davante Adams is because the Raiders just got rid of McDaniels and benched Jimmy Garoppolo and got rid of the GM last night at midnight. So obviously the Raiders are in a sell situation, and Davante Adams is disgruntled. So if you're Vegas, you would certainly entertain offers to get a disgruntled player off of your books when you're not winning anyways. And Carr and Davante Adams are best buds. They're BFFs. So if you had to give up a second and a fourth or a second and a fifth or whatever to get Adams, I think it would have been perfect. And man, you talk about some weapons. If you're rolling out Davante Adams, Chris Olave, Mike Thomas, and then you have Rasheed Shaheed as your fourth receiver, that is insane. I wouldn't say receiver or Davante Adams was necessarily a need for the Saints, but the way everything lined up with Adams and Carr's relationship and the Raiders firing McDaniels, I think it at least would have warranted a call. The next player, this player actually did get dealt, Chase Young. So Chase Young, 24 years old from Washington, was dealt for a third-round pick. Chase Young, I've been pretty low on him since he came out of college. My tape on him was that he was in college. He would take these huge, these lap kind of routes with the quarterback. And most of his sacks were at the end of this crazy long route around. And it was because college quarterbacks either hold the ball too long or they try and escape out of the back of the pocket. The problem was when Young got to the NFL, the quarterbacks don't hold the ball that long. So all of a sudden, those long routes that he was taking to get to the quarterback weren't working out. Now, I do think Chase Young is still valuable. He's still a young, athletic pass rusher. You can never have too many of those. And for a third-round pick, I would roll the dice on that. He'd be a good player to kind of rotate into the line, get some action, and also would be a good player for the future if we do have some movement or some turnover on that defensive line. I think I might have said offensive line. That defensive line, like if Cam Jordan retires or whatever happens with him in the next couple of years, it'd be nice to have a Chase Young there to plug in. But again, not a necessity, but it might have been nice. Besides that, you could look at like some back end players, some secondary help if you really wanted to. Obviously, offensive line was an actual issue for the Saints, so this would have been a good time to go and get an offensive lineman from a bad team that are an offensive lineman maybe on a big contract or something. So besides that, though, you know, what really would the Saints have to add? I would say if you take Adams away, more depth. You know, secondary depth's always good to have. Obviously, offensive line is something we need. Besides that, you know, Derrick Henry was available apparently, but why would we add Derrick Henry? So another thing we need, and this might sound crazy too, is a tight end. We have a bunch of tight ends, but none of them do anything. Like Foster Moreau, Jawan Johnson, Jimmy Graham, even Taysom, I guess you can throw in there, but Taysom's he doesn't really count. And a guy, you're going to see a theme here, but a guy I think could have been had is Darren Waller. The Giants are terrible, right? The Giants are not going anywhere. The Giants, if you make an offer for Waller, I think they listen. And again, that's a guy that Derek Carr has a relationship with, and a guy who Derek Carr has proven he can utilize. Derek Carr needs a tight end. He needs a guy he can throw to in the middle of the field. We don't really have that. So bringing Waller in, I think would have really unlocked some stuff in this offense. It would have been an immediate impact. That would have really, and a lot of what I'm doing here as a GM is I'm trying to make my franchise quarterback as comfortable as possible. So if I have an opportunity to go get two of his guys or one of his guys, I'm going to take that opportunity. I would at least make the phone call.
Were you guys called? Did you guys get calls?
Well, we talked to a couple teams about a couple of things, more in the acquisition area as opposed to trading somebody. We didn't really talk about trading anyone from our team, but we did talk to a couple teams about an acquisition, but I wouldn't say it ever got really serious.
So you see kind of two schools of thought during this time, like Washington they deal Montez Sweat, who you will face this week, assuming he plays. Also Chase Young, they get a second rounder in 24 and a third rounder. I mean, I guess teams that are somewhat position heavy and just looking for some draft capital.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is determined.
It's interesting. Mickey said they weren't interested in selling. They weren't interested in getting rid of anybody, which means he is aligned with me that he thinks we're in a position to win, which is good to hear. If you're a Saints fan, it's good to hear the front office believe that we're in a winning window and we were looking to acquire. So I'm interested to see, and obviously we'll never know, but I would be interested to know who they called about. It might have just been some depth players, maybe a cornerback here or a safety here, or maybe a backup, lineman here. So it might not have been anyone big splashy like Adams or Waller or any of those guys. But you do wonder, like, I wonder if they made the call. I wonder because they had to think about Adams, maybe not Waller, but at least Adams. And I wonder if they possibly would have entertained a conversation with Las Vegas.
By how you see the season playing out, and then you look at your roster and the team, the guys that are coming up as free agents, and whether what's your opportunity to re-sign them. There's a lot of factors that go into making a decision on trading a player, and then on the other side of that, it's say who can help us now, accomplish our short-term goals, or in some cases, you want an opportunity to have a player in your system and make a decision on having them for the long term.
There seems to be, and maybe this is arbitrary, but there seems to be more movement in other leagues around the trade deadline of the NFL. Is that just based on, because in trade deadline in the NBA, one guy and in the NHL can make significant impacts, whereas in the NFL it seems a little more difficult. I'm just curious.
I think that's an interesting question. I think in the NBA, so obviously you have like tanking involved. I don't fully believe tanking is totally a thing, but it's much easier to tank in the NBA than it is to tank in the NFL. When you're in the NFL, it's not easy to tell those players out there, hey, just go get dominated for 4 quarters. Like I say, physically demanding sport. So the idea of like tanking or things like that is much less likely. Also, I think the idea of the draft is much more important. So in the NBA, you really, really want a top pick. And if you get a top pick, you're probably drafting a very impactful player. More than not, in the NFL, the draft isn't really that important. Like, yes, a first round pick is obviously good, but the 17th pick, the 12th pick, it's not as valuable as a high pick in the NBA. And a lot of people are going to disagree with that. A lot of people are going to be, they're going to push back on that. They're going to say, whoa. What if you get a stud, some stud quarterback in the top 10 picks? Interesting stat. I saw this the other day. I'm going to paraphrase, so the years might not be exactly true. It's something like, I want to say it might even be like 2000. What year was Matt Stafford drafted? 2006? Somewhere in there? I think it was the year after Stafford was drafted. Let's just go there. Someone double check me on this. I'm pretty sure the stat is, since that year, there has been one quarterback drafted in the first round that has won a Super Bowl. One out of the 100 quarterbacks or whatever it was. It might actually be quarterbacks drafted. It might not even be the first round. But the one quarterback is Patrick Mahomes. That's it. And it's crazy when you look at it. It's wild when you look at the. I guess it has to be first round. I would think. I'll have to go back and double check that. But I'm pretty sure it was first round quarterbacks drafted since blank year, and I think it was the year after Stafford because obviously he won the Super Bowl. One quarterback, Patrick Mahomes. The point is, a lot of great quarterbacks do get drafted. The Andrew Lucks, the Cam Newtons, the Matt Ryans, the whoever, but they never get there. They don't get to that point. In the NFL, a lot of those picks are going to cornerbacks and linemen and whatever. So the idea of tanking or moving assets to get draft picks is very valuable in other sports. It's not as valuable in the NFL. That's just how it is.
Yeah, but I never really looked at it from the standpoint of us versus another league. I do think this, when you have a hard cap, that makes things a little more difficult to absorb a contract, at this time of the year, because typically a lot of teams, including us, are up against the cap, and so you have to maneuver in order to add somebody. Generally don't want to take away salary cap from a future year, so it's just a little more difficult logistically.
And I'm not saying that.
I think another reason too is that the season's so short. You see a lot more movement in the offseason of the NFL because a mid-season move, the season is so compressed that even if you get a quarterback, let's say you're the Falcons, and let's say you make a trade for Matt Stafford. Let's make something up. By the time he gets in to your team, gets acclimated, figures out the playbook, does all that stuff, you're not going to really see the fruits of that trade for like 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And at that point, it's like, why even make the trade? You could skill position players, stuff like that, plug and play players, that happens. But I think because of the condensed schedule, you only have 17 games versus an NBA schedule with a lot of games, or an MLB schedule with a lot of games. And it's, the playbook it's not as play centric. Like baseball, you go out there and play. NBA, to a certain extent, you go out there and play. You have to learn some plays, but it's not like the NFL where every play is a play. So there's that aspect too. So the NFL is it's much more of an off-season beast than a mid-season trade beast. If you make a mid-season trade, very rarely is it going to be for a quarterback. Very rarely is it going to be for someone who's going to come in and fully learn a playbook. It'll be for someone who you can kind of just plug in and give them some time to kind of pick things up.
Had any impact on anything financially, but it was always, I'm probably the only guy that finds out. I'm the first guy Saturday that asks your team about practice squad elevations because I'm trying to get my board set. And you didn't have any this week. And I knew you had the bug kind of going through, and it's been a while. I'd have to go back. I'm just, not to have any practice squad elevations. Well, one, to me, it says that your team's in pretty good shape health-wise, and you're not going to do it just for the heck of it because it counts as an activation.
Right. Yeah, we have limitations on activations. We did talk about activating a player, and yet it ultimately came down to let's save the activation for a time that's a little more critical. And you're right. We've been a team that almost every week we're going to have an elevation, if not two. And I think most teams are in that category, particularly once you get past the first 4 weeks of the season, because you've got a lot of players that are banged up. In our case, we had, a bit of a virus go through our team, and we had a lot of guys that were ailing, and yet, man, a lot of guys that had the bug found a way to suit up and play on Sunday.
Just curious, before we take the break, did that impact the administration? Did it go through with the building, or was it kind of limited to the locker room?
Who cares? What a weird, sometimes these questions blow my mind. Like, why do I care? Why does anyone care if the receptionist in the administration got the flu? Why does anyone care if some marketing professional got the flu? Or if, what does it matter? Like, could you imagine? This question is insane. We're asking, the Saints right now are 4-4, coming off the biggest win of the season against Indy. The trade deadline was 12 hours ago. We are lining up to play Chicago. We are trying to finish the season with 11 wins. We're trying to win the division. And we got the GM on the line. And we're asking if anyone in accounting came down with a bug. Bananas in pajamas. Sidebar. In New Orleans, we've had a really interesting couple weeks here. There was like a marsh fire and fog happened at the same time. And it created smog, smoke and fog. Everyone in New Orleans has been sick. I don't know if it's breathing in the toxic smog air. As y'all know, I was sick, but persevered, gave y'all a video every day through my illness. No big deal, kind of big deal. I know so many people who are sick. And I don't think it's a coincidence that the entire Saints team was also sick that exact same week. So either the most hellacious virus went through New Orleans, or that smog really did a number on people. But as you can hear now, I'm almost back at 100%. So, and I got a haircut. And let me say this too. No one in the comments in the last couple of videos has mentioned the haircut since I got one. I'm not happy about that. I've gone hatless. All right, y'all know I usually rock the hat when I'm doing the videos because it's a little more comfortable with the headset. I've even gone hatless to try and show off the haircut, and I scour through the comments after every video, and not a single one mentioned the haircut. Unbelievable. I thought we were all friends here.
Yeah, we had a couple upstairs that were sick, but fortunately we're not counting on those guys on Sunday for the most part.
Thank you, Mickey. Good, thank you.
When you guys went out and signed Rasheed Shaheed as an undrafted free agent, paid him a little more, paid him, I think, $222 total. And I think he made $705 his first year. Now he's making, $870, no prorated bonuses, no roster bonuses. Wow. Great job for that. If your administration, the scouting department, that's just what a find, right?
For now, what a find right now. What was Mike Hoss saying this after Green Bay? Well, maybe. Rasheed did return the punt, but Rasheed had 0 catches that game. So right now, Rasheed Shaheed is looking good. Do I put a ton of stock in 3 catches for 153 yards? I don't know. So it's anytime you have a Hail Mary kind of player, like a boom or bust kind of player, you're always hesitant. It's always like, is this a consistent thing? I like Shaheed. I wish he was more utilized in the offense. I think he's a playmaker. I think he's got something that no one else on the team does. We've got Thomas, who's kind of the physical guy. Olave is somewhere in between a physical guy and kind of kind of more of an agile player. But Shaheed is a straight burner, and he's not someone we haven't had someone like that in a while. So it's nice to see a skill set. Even Taysom's used dynamically, but he's used as more of like a power runner, and he's closer to like a fullback or a tight end. But to have Shaheed's skill set is refreshing. Do I trust Pete Carmichael and the brain trust to figure out how to use them besides just Rasheed go? But besides just go routes? No, I do not.
Yeah, that's a credit to the area scouts and the guys that are out there, looking at every player at every school and finding some characteristics that they like. And he was a good player and was identified early on. We talked about drafting him, late in the draft, and luckily we had some scouts that had a good relationship with the player and with his agent, and Darren Rizzi and the special teams coaches were involved in that as well, because we really saw him first as a returner, a receiver second. And so I would say we've been pleasantly surprised how quickly he's developed as a receiver. And that's a credit to our coaches and to Rasheed himself.
Yeah, he's been really good. Ladies and gentlemen, let me know in the comments below if you think the Saints should have made a move. I don't think it's like season breaking or that big of a deal that they didn't make a move, but I would have liked to see something. But you never know with the salary cap and what they were trying to do, what they're trying to do with the books. I know we're in kind of a financial situation. So let me know in the comments below what you think. Who should the Saints have got? What move would you have liked to see? What do you think about Waller or Adams or Young? Or is there someone else out there? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next video.